Hey all, I hope you're doing well and welcome to this Cine Circle event where we'll be talking about independent film distribution with Dean Fisher. First things first, for anyone who hasn't been to any of our events on this Facebook group, feel free to ask any questions you might have in the comments. Feel free to, just ask any questions, even use it to network and so on. First things first, it would be great if you guys could give me a thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, just to make sure that everything is working, and then we will get started on the talk. There might be just a slight delay between what you guys see over here and here and what we're saying. So I'm just going to wait a moment to get those thumbs up from you guys. Great. I see the thumbs up. So in that case, we will get started. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Dean and we'll start the talk. Okay. Hi, Dean. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We're really pleased to have you here. And first things first, perhaps it would be great if you could just introduce yourself, let us know who you are, what you've done as a filmmaker in the past.
No worries. Well, I'm Dean Fisher. Obviously, you can see my name there. So I've been a producer for over 20 years. Within that, I started out making short films, any type of short film stuff that I could do, and then eventually I moved into feature films, and now I'm currently working on feature film number 12. And the type of films I've made has been all sorts of genres, from comedies to romantic comedies to horrors to thrillers. I've not stayed at one genre because I kind of fall in love with stories and want to tell those stories, and it doesn't matter if it's not something that I've done before. I don't have a niche as a filmmaker. I've done a few sports films as well, but that's because that's a passion to me. I love football or soccer, if anyone's watching in America. But so I did a film about that particular sport, but all sorts of things. And then also as a producer, you end up having to self-distribute films. So I've ended up distributing quite a few of my own films as well. Sometimes I've also sold the rights to different places around the world, and I also set up a platform called Ahoy, out my frustration really, because there were certain times where there was a lack of opportunities for filmmakers. So if you didn't get on Netflix or iTunes or one of the major platforms, then there wasn't many places you can go to. So I decided to create a different type of platform, and that's where Ahoy came about. And for me, it's also an area that can build up traffic, so I can produce content to eventually go on there, and then you've hopefully got an audience to tap into as well. And plus, obviously, give other filmmakers the opportunity to exhibit and share their work with an audience. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Great. And we'll get to talking a little bit more about Film Ahoy, but for anyone who would like to check any the website out, or a video on how you can put your own film up there, there should be some links just above this video for you guys on the Facebook group, so you can check that out after the talk. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Great. So let's dive straight into sort of independent film distribution. And perhaps the best place to start is to just talk a little bit about, could you tell us what are the main options? You've got your film, you want to get in distribution, you want to get it seen, you want to monetize it. What are your main options for doing that?
Well, I don't believe there's one solution that fits every particular film. I think you have to look at your film and where you believe it can go to. Some films are suited better for online platforms. Some might be a theatrical film. Some might work better for the major festivals. So it really depends on the film that you've created. I know we all think we're going to go and win Oscars and BAFTAs, but there's also reality. So I always believe reach for the stars and try and go as high as you can, and obviously you work your way down, and eventually you'll find the level what your film, where it should be at. But in terms of what's available to you as a filmmaker, sometimes it's worth pre-selling the film. If you can get a deal in advance when you're making your film and you've got your script and you're looking for finance, then you can go out to distributors, and that's what we call a pre-sale, where they'll come in and buy the rights for that country in advance of you making the film. So that's one option. But then the other option, if you don't go down the road and you've funded the film through private equity or your own credit card or whatever you've done, then the options are, you've got quite a few. One is the film markets. So the reason of going to someone like Cannes, Berlin, or the American film market is to try and get a sales agent. That model's changing a lot, and I think certainly with this pandemic, it's a very much a changing world that we're in. The traditional way would normally be get a sales agent, and then that sales agent will have the relationships in all the different countries around the world, and then they will try and sell the licenses of your film to different countries. So, for the UK, they will tell you a price of what they expect to get, and then a bottom price, and then they go out to the market and try and sell it. And the reason I would go to Cannes, Berlin, or American film market is to try and get a sales agent on board my project. Now it's changing slightly, where you can sell direct into platforms yourself, or you can go to an all rights aggregator that will just place it on all the platforms. So it is changing, but that's why I'm also saying that every film's different, because some films will warrant getting a sales agent and they believe that they can sell it in a lot of different territories. And that's the best way, is trying to get what you call a minimum guarantee, which is basically a license fee for your film. And then there's other rights that they try and sell. So the top end is theatrical rights, and then now everyone's looking to do the Netflix deal or the platform deal, because they believe that will generate a lot of money. And at the end of the day, whatever route you go down, the aim is always to try and get recoupment for the investor. So you're trying to find the best strategy to give your investor a return. So that's why I would go to a market to look for a sales agent, or you can also go to a market to try and sell directly to distributors yourself as well. When you go to somewhere like Cannes or Berlin, there's Chinando, or some people call it Cinedu. But that's where every contact is available. So you look for acquisitions people, and acquisitions people are actively looking for content, and we'll look at your film, and sometimes you screen your film at a market to hopefully sell it to buyers. The other way is going to markets that also tie into festivals as well. So for instance, if you got into Cannes, which is very, very rare, or got into Berlin, then you've also got a market attached to the festival. Toronto is another one like that. And if you can get into that festival, then that really helps the sales of your film, because then if you've got a sales agent on board at that point, then that really helps the conversations with the buyers and the distributors, because your film is in competition at that festival. So there's so many different strategies, and a lot of people talk about festivals as being, where they want to be at. And it can be really good for the filmmaker. It's a great experience, because you can go around the world and show your film to different audiences and enjoy that experience and get the audience feedback. But sometimes it can also harm the film if you go to too many festivals that don't mean anything. The reason why I like to go to festivals is because I'm trying to sell my film and get a deal out of it. So you've got to try and use that opportunity to build exposure. And there's so many different facets to distribution. It's so hard to explain in an hour exactly what it is, because sometimes I've gone down self-distribution route. You go down the route which you think's best for that film, and if that doesn't work, then you've got to keep changing your strategy.
Sure. definitely. So that's all really interesting, and let's maybe dive a little deeper into each one of these. So we've got some questions about pre-sales. So maybe we can start there. Are there any sort of particular projects that you feel work best in terms of getting pre-sales, or are there other projects or types of films that you think it's probably not even worth bothering? You know, for example, if I've got a film that's really low budget, it's got no known actors, perhaps it doesn't fall into a specific genre or niche, is it worth even trying to get pre-sales for those films, or are there certain projects like that you want to?
Certainly in that situation, I say no, don't pre-sell it, because one, you probably couldn't anyway, because they're not going to pay money up in advance for if it hasn't got the talent attached. And what they would say, that's a wait and see. So they want to see what you do with a film, and if it's good enough, then obviously, then they might want to buy it. But I think it's where you can do well with pre-sales is if you've got a specific genre that was very marketable, because like sci-fi, horror, sometimes it depends on the genre, what you're trying to make, action, war films, those you can pre-sell definitely. But then if you've got names attached that mean something for the market, then that will be definitely a situation that you can pre-sale. And a lot of films are still funded through the pre-sales. Part of their finance plan is getting a worldwide distribution deal as an MG against worldwide rights, or UK pre-sale or things like that, because that's how they structure their finance. And it's still very much part of it. There's pros and cons with pre-selling. One of the cons is if the film is an absolute massive hit and you've agreed a license fee in advance, that's all you're seeing. But sometimes you do get what you call overages, where they recoup the cost of the release of the film plus the minimum guarantee of what they paid you. And then you go into a situation with overages, but the percentages are quite low because they've had to make a massive investment into your project. So they will squeeze you down on the percentages of what you call the back end profits. So there's pros and cons with it. I would always, if you can, get the stars and everyone attached, and you can structure your budget in a certain way, then that really works well for the pre-sales, but it's really hard to do. And of course, with the pandemic, there's probably less money around at the moment. So not a lot of people are chucking out money for MGs. So, it's an ever-changing world. But if you can go down that road, then that's the preferred route, definitely.
Okay, well that's really interesting. Let's maybe talk a little bit about going to the different markets. And we've got a first question over here about that, which was if I am going to the Cannes market or something like that, what should I bring with me in terms of materials to show to potential sales agents besides the film itself? What are other things that sales agents would like to see at that point?
Yeah, well, funny enough, the film itself is probably not something that will be shown unless obviously putting on a screen. And you've only got a few key assets that you can get people's attention. So your poster artwork is always a very key part, because that says them whether it's a high glossy film and what the genre is. So that really is key. And then your trailer is the other key thing. So many people don't spend the time on the trailer, and that's your first insight to the film. And you can also see what the production values are like, and whether it's a dynamic story. So those are the two key assets. And then the other one you might do is a bit of a sales pitch, which will be a document which will have the cast and crew, mainly the cast, because that's generally what people are interested in. A bit about the director, the key artwork, and then maybe some stills from the making of the film, and screen grabs if that's all you've got. But that's what I would generally take to a market, and then have a pitch together for your project, because sometimes you might only end up with a 2 or 3 minutes with someone, so you really got to grab their attention there and then. And everyone's interested, but you never truly know how interested they are until after the market, and we've get the follow-up call or meeting. But
Sure.
that's the key tools, and try and book your meetings in advance. Is definitely one of the things I learned. It's nothing worse than going to market, seeing loads of people in meetings 24/7, and you're sat around drinking coffee, and that gets quite expensive doing that. So I generally try and book all my meetings way in advance by using Synodoo, and looking at researching the people that I want to meet, and then send them emails, call them up, do whatever, hound them until they say, right, I'll take the meeting. And that's really how it works. And obviously, the more markets you go to and the more years you go, then you work out who you've got on with and can trust, and also you'll work out who you want to avoid and not work with, and you also go into the markets. It becomes a bit of a catch up and social, so you're keeping those relationships going. And I always feel if I don't go to one of the key markets, you're not as visible. And it might be that you don't have a lot to sell or do at that particular market, but just by being there, other opportunities come from it because you're in the marketplace where people are talking about making films all the time. So a lot of things do come up because of that.
Okay, and we got a question about this Synodoo for booking the meetings. What is that website?
So when you go to Cannes, you normally get, if you paid for the full accreditation, you get a massive book called the Cannes Film Market Guide, and that's basically got everyone in there, everyone who's attending the market in there, from and it's broken down per country, what they do, whether they're distributor, sales agent, financier, agent, or producer. So it's basically got everyone's details there. So what they've now done is put that online. So I think it's synodoo.com or something. But it was tied up with the Cannes market. But then if you go to some of the other markets, then you get your subscription with it for, normally it's about a year, which you can pay for just for a year. But it's just a database of people, and it's quite good because also not everyone goes to every market. So if you were going to Berlin or the American film market, it have what market they're attending at the time, so you can just approach the people that are going to that particular market. And it's just a great way of emailing and contacting them, and also you can see what type of films they're distributing or involved with, so you can do your research. It's what you don't want to do is get there and realise just it's a waste of time meeting these people, and you don't get long at these meetings. Generally, a market meeting is about 20 minutes maximum, and then you've got 10 minutes to find your way to your next one. And it depends how hard you want to work at a market, but sometimes, like an American film market, I'd have meetings every half an hour, but you're in one hotel, so you've literally just going up and down the floors to get to the next meeting. So it's a lot easier to see a lot of people in a short space of time. And the great thing with markets is you've got people from all over the world in one place, so you've got an opportunity to meet everyone. So that's why I use Synodoo, because it's basically got everyone's details there, and it's a good way of contacting people and pre-arranging your meetings.
Okay, great. And now let's maybe segue a little bit into smaller festivals, where you might not be able to find sales agent, for example. But do you find that being accepted and winning into those festivals significantly helps in terms of getting distribution, or helping you self-distribute the film later on? We've had some mixed things that I've heard over the last couple of days from different producers. Some, for example, said that actually if you're if you put all those laurels on the DVD cover, for example, it's a little bit too highbrow, and they'd never do that. Some people say that it's it's really important. So, what are your opinions on film festivals, and how useful are they?
I think it's getting the right laurels on there. If it's Bob Jones Festival from down the road, no, it doesn't mean anything. There's so many small little festivals that you can enter and get accepted into and put the laurels on there. But I think it's really, if you're going to put them on there, it's the festivals that mean something. And you've got your top tier festivals. You've got your Sundance, your Venice, and these are really hard to get into because a lot of festivals also want the stars. They want the stars going up the red carpets and being papped and getting the coverage because they're also thinking about their survival and status as well. But if you can get into one of the major festivals, then 100% put those laurels over there because that makes a big difference. The same if you got an Oscar nomination or a BAFTA, you're going to chuck that everywhere you can because that's something really credible. But if you're getting into loads of small festivals, then what it can do is a couple things. One, it can put distributors off because they think it's being exposed too much in the market. And also, every time it plays in front of 500 or 600 people at a festival, that's 500 or 600 people less buying their film. So if you've covered off America and done 20 or 30 festivals, you might actually do yourself more harm than good. But then some festivals can also pay you a fee for what people don't always realize is that there are certain festivals in America, for instance, that will pay you say $500 or it's even up to $1,000. Plus, sometimes they will pay for you to fly out there. So if you can get into 20 or 30 festivals in America, that actually might be more money than you would have made from distribution anyway. I'm not saying that's a guarantee. And there are people out there like festival bookers that have those relationships. So you'd employ one of those to try and get into the festivals. And by having a festival booker as well, you can avoid all the festival fees because that can be very expensive. There's a lot of festivals around the world that will just charge you an entry fee, and even by getting in there, it's not going to do much for your film. So it's just being selective, and it's doing the research of knowing what is a festival that's going to mean something for distribution. If you don't care and you just want to get your film in the festival to have experience of sharing your film in front of audiences, that's fine. But know that that's not going to necessarily help for your distribution.
Okay. And now, before we move on to self-distribution, which is a big topic that a lot of indie filmmakers are really interested in, let's talk a little bit about speaking to distributors or finding distributors outside of film markets, for example. What a lot of filmmakers might do is simply start Googling different distributors and just emailing every single one they can find. Do you find that there are any kind of strategies for how you can best research distributors who would be interested in your kind of film, for example? What are the best ways to do that?
Well, in the UK, I believe it's shrinking a bit. There's a lot less distributors than there were a couple of years ago. And what you're also seeing is a lot of companies are amalgamating. So, other companies are buying up companies. And so that world has shrunk. When I first started going to Cannes, the whole of the closet was full of sales companies, distributors, and banners everywhere. Now it's getting smaller and smaller. So the industry is changing a lot, and that has been affected by streamers and so on. But answering your question, I think the best thing to do is go on their website and see what films are distributed, and compare your film to that. So if you've got a sci-fi film and you've seen this company's been really successful with sci-fis, then perfect. Then what you would do is, for instance, looking at Cinedu or just going on their website, find out who the acquisitions people are in those companies, send them the artwork, the trailer, give them a call. What I've done also quite a lot is put on screenings in London and invited them all along to it. Obviously, that's a bit hard at the moment, but things will come back online and that opportunity will happen. A lot of people will rather just screen it at home, but I think you always can benefit by putting more distributors in a room. If it's a good film and they stay to the end, because the other thing about market screenings are quite harsh, and they know within 10 or 15 minutes whether it's right for them, and if it's not, they're straight out that door in 10 or 15 minutes, and it's quite degrading sometimes from that side. But it's just that's the business. It's what you sometimes forget. As much as we're passionate about our films, and love what we make, it's still a commodity that you have to sell, and distributors see it as a commodity. You know, they will put it in a box. They'll look at sci-fi films if it's a sci-fi, and previous numbers of what these type of films have done before. And if they think they can make money on it, then they will stay and make an offer. So certainly putting on screenings is great, because then you can put all the rivals in a room together, and if they're enjoying it enough, then you know that you can try and play them off against each other. So that's one way. The other way is just obviously contact everyone and send a screener, and then see who bites. But I do believe it's worth sending stuff and then following up with a phone call, because a lot of people don't do that. I mean, if you get a response straight away, then you don't need to. But I think sometimes just picking up the phone and speaking to people, you can build your relationships, and because not everyone does it, I think it gives you more opportunity to try and push it as far as possible. But it still comes down to the fact whether they see enough potential within your film that they want to buy it. And you will get offered all sorts of deals. The type of distribution deals now can range from what they call is a straight distribution deal, where you get no money up front. It's a profit split, and then obviously it's down to you to try and negotiate the highest percentage for yourself. But then you also have to cap the expenses of because every film has expenses in releasing it. So there'll be PR, marketing costs, actual physical distribution costs if you're going to have posters, billboards, all that needs to be accounted for. So if you have a cap on that, then you know roughly how much you need to bring in before you start seeing any money. And then the other way is an MG deal, where they're giving you a license fee up front, and like I explained before, where you'll get a lower percentage if they give you a good figure up front. And those MG deals can be structured in different ways. Some will be, say, 20% on signature, then another amount on delivery, and then another amount on release. Netflix, I've heard, pay even longer. That might be going over 2 years or something sometimes. So if you're relying on that money, you might sometimes get a loan to cash flow that if you need that as part of your film finance. And then you need to get banks in to, a bank or a lender that would lend that MG, and then they will ask for a bonding company because they don't want to lend money and not have the film finished. So then a bond is there to guarantee that the film finishes. But that's just, there's so many different parts of the way it works for MGs and distributors. But I've sold to all sorts of distributors, and sometimes a sales agent will do that on your behalf, or certainly in your own territory like the UK. I think it's easier to build relationships yourself, because you're here, you can go and meet people, and the more network you build up, the easier it is to get those deals.
Okay, and are there specific things that you should stay away from in terms of if you're trying to find your first distribution deal? Are there any advice that you can give to filmmaker in terms of if a distributor tries this, run the other way, anything such as a contract that's just way too long, or are there any specific things like that turns that dodgy distributors do rather than better ones?
Yeah, well, I think there was a saying, where there's a hit, there's a rip. Because, when I've had more successful films, you've ended up having to audit the companies and threaten them with legal action to get paid sometimes. And, that's quite common, unfortunately, in this industry, that if there's a pot of money, they will want to keep it more than give it to you. So you have to make sure that your contract's watertight, and you're covering yourself by having a right to audit, so you can go to their offices and look at the books that relate to your film and the revenue that's received, and then you can get like a forensic accountant, an auditor, to go in look at those books, and we had to do that on one of our films, and quite a lot of money ended up on the next statement because they obviously realised they were going to be caught out. But what you look for is, I think there's a trust. Everyone's going to be in when they want your film. Everyone's going to be really nice to you. But I would actually say, ask other filmmakers what their experience was like working with them. Get references, because that's something I firmly believe in. Because if someone's got a terrible reputation or they've had a really bad experience, it's good to know. Not every filmmaker will tell you, but maybe what you can do is look on their website and then go on the IMDb and contact all the filmmakers. And if you contact 5 or 6, I understand not every film works, and so they might be slagging off the distributor when it wasn't really justified because just the film didn't work. But if they didn't pay the filmmaker and it was successful, then you definitely don't want to be working with them. So it's just things like that. It's just doing your research on the people, and contracts wise, if you can afford it, get a lawyer to check it out. Some will do a short form deal memo, which could be 3 or 4 pages. Some will do a 30-page contract. A 30-page contract obviously will have a lot more clauses in there. The other thing you've got to work out is the cost of delivery items. Like some of the major companies will have a 20 or 30-page delivery list. And the idea is if you default on one of those items, then they cannot pay you the amount of money that they owe you. So that's a bit of a game. And so you've really got to make sure you look at the delivery schedule and understand it, because some things can be very expensive. If they ask for 35mm print and they're only paying you 5,000 advance, then you're going to lose money, and quite a lot of money. So it's just looking at all the nitty gritty. And if you don't understand it, maybe speak to another producer if you can't afford a lawyer and say, can you look over this, and just give them a consultancy amount of money, because that will save you a lot of money in the long term. But it's so difficult because Hollywood creative accounting is known in the industry. So whatever way you work, or whoever you work with, it's always going to be a challenge to make sure that you get your money and what's due to you, and that's a battle all producers have.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay, and for anyone who's now listening and is feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the the thought of going with a distributor and the amount of things that you need to think about, let's maybe segue that into self-distribution and have a think about that. It seems to be something that's definitely on the rise. A lot more filmmakers are doing it. It seems that now it's a lot more possible for indie filmmakers in the low budgets to actually self-distribute their film and possibly even be successful with it. So when you're considering self-distribution, again, let's maybe start off with what are your options, in terms of online distribution? Is it even possible to self-distribute it in cinemas? What are your options in the indie filmmaker who wants to self-distribute their film?
Well, I suppose the reason why you would go down self-distribution is, one, if no distributor wants your film, but you still feel there's an audience for it. A lot of people can get it wrong as well. Or the other way is that you said, I've spent 4 years trying to make this film. This has been a real labour of love. I don't want to just give it to someone for free that's not going to have the same passion as me as a filmmaker. And that's one of the reasons why you want to do self-distribution. If you can sell to a major studio and get a great figure for your film, take it. Because self-distribution is just as hard as making the films. I really find that it is probably actually harder, because obviously I'm experienced as a filmmaker, so I've experienced loads of different scenarios and feel whatever's thrown at me, I found a way of surviving. But with distribution, you don't have the experience of being a distributor, and it's knowing how to get your film out there. And there's a combination of things when you look at self-distribution. So if you can push your film out theatrically, that's great, because that can obviously add more exposure and in the eyes of media. the media, they will see that as a theatrical film, and you will get more coverage because of that. You might get reviews and things like that that you wouldn't get as a straight to home entertainment. So I suppose the pinnacle of what we're trying to do as filmmakers, get as many eyes on our films as possible and as much revenue in as possible. So from a theatrical point of view, you can go one or two ways. You can try and contact cinemas yourself and speak to the programmers for those cinemas, and try and get them to take on your film. But then they want to know other elements, which I'll come to, which is your P&A spend, so your prints and advertising spend. Because a cinema might not take on your film if they don't feel there's going to be a campaign behind it and no one's actually going to hear of it. So that's one way, is you pitching in, giving your heartfelt plea to the bookers to book your film, or you go to a cinema booker who basically has the relationships with the cinemas. I've worked with a guy called Martin Myers for quite a few years, and Martin is super experienced and has great relationships with the cinemas. Obviously, he charges a consultancy fee for what he does, but then he has the relationships with all the chains. He will screen the film to Cineworld and all the major chains. It depends on how you want to strategize your theatrical release. If you've got some money together to release it and you feel you can go big and wide, then that's what you want to do, is go to all the multiplexes and see what deals are possible. If it's an art house film, he might go down the art house cinema chain. If it's more mainstream, then he might say, can we do an exclusive with Showcase or Cineworld? So that's one of the ways. Or you can look at booking the independent cinemas or the smaller ones and doing it that way. And we've done all sorts of things in terms of trying to get that theatrical window. And then the other thing you've got to think about is your launch events, your premiere, and how you go about that. On my last film, unfortunately, there was a pandemic around. I don't know if you know about that, but there's been a pandemic going on. Basically, we couldn't release in cinemas. We had a Leicester Square premiere booked. We thought, okay, that's great. We're going to do, the Leicester Square premiere, and it just didn't happen and couldn't happen. So we changed our strategy to a drive-in premiere, and that was different because at that time there still wasn't a lot of confidence of people going out and attending events. I think it was July last year we had it, and so with that, it was quite a challenge because we basically had an empty car park at Brent Cross. We had to fit it with the whole infrastructure, so traffic management, to make sure the cars were routed in the right areas. We hired a double-decker party bus, a big outside catering area, plus a 100-meter screen on a lorry. There's a lot of stuff that we had to find: toilets, catering for the guests. So it was a big infrastructure. But the reason why we did it is because we knew we'd get a lot of publicity, and felt with that particular film there was a real opportunity, and there wasn't a lot going on. So it was also about timing and why we did it. So we hired a publicist. In this case, someone called Jenny van der Berg, who was absolutely amazing. I worked with Jenny before, and she gets a lot of reality stars and people that can go on your carpet. And the last film was a snooker film, so we had a green carpet, but she got loads of people on that carpet that were newsworthy. So we got Good Morning Britain came down, did a whole piece on that at the premiere. Because it was a drive-in premiere, we also themed it with loads of classic cars. We had a lot of movie cars. So we had the Back to the Future replica car there, Grease car, and it just made it a massive, exciting event. And each event's different. Like the one before that, we did at Wembley Stadium. It was a football film or soccer film in America. So we felt by launching that one, we should do that at the home of soccer. So we hired Wembley Stadium, not the whole stadium, and had 90,000 people, but a function room within that, and a bar area as well. And that was a great event because we had that was a 1960s film, so we had classic cars coming up to the carpet, dropping off the celebrities and the guests, and again we got so much coverage. And the reason why you do these events is because you want to get the coverage, for your film, and make it feel bigger than it is. And also by putting these events on, you can get sponsorship. So when the celebrities are going down that red carpet and you've got all these boards behind them, you can sell that space, and that's great advertising for people as well. We've had quite a lot of news outlets and all sorts of things. So it's definitely worth thinking about your event and what you can afford. And if you can get sponsorship for that, then that's great at launch thing. And then beyond the theatrical side, then you've got to work out where you're going afterwards. So you, I'm just quickly go back to the theatrical side. So on the theatrical side, there's different deals you can do with cinemas, and it's hard sometimes to make money from it because you've got to pay out what you call prints and advertising. So you'll need a print, which is now you can do them wirelessly, but it still costs a certain fee for everyone you deliver. So say that's £100 per print that you deliver to the cinemas. Then you've got to obviously have posters and promotion materials to put in that cinema. And then you've got to do a split with the box office. And it's quite low for a standard release. Sometimes it's 30% we would receive of the box office, 35%. They also take off VAT from that. So you might actually see about 25%. So it's quite a low percentage. You think, I'll get loads of money in, but it is quite low. The only way you can get a higher percentage is if you do Q&As, but then obviously you've got to attend those events. And that's another way of building up your theatrical to do the Q&As, but that's a lot of work, because then that means one of you or a group of you have to tour the country and attend these Q&As. And also people have got to buy the tickets as well. So there's different challenges within that. But then afterwards, then you're looking at where else you can sell it to. So if you can sell to a subscription service like an SVOD, i.e. Netflix, Amazon, and they pay you an MG, or Sky Movies are certainly doing that, then that's your first window, and that's a way of guaranteeing that you can get some good money in. Then you've got other aspects to think about. Then you've got obviously DVD. Is it worth the investment of DVD? Because DVD revenue, certainly in the UK, is dropping. It's still doing okay in the US, but with DVD, you've got quite a few different costs. So you've got the British Board of Film Classification in the UK, and in the US it's the MPAA. So you've got to get it rated. Then you've got to obviously create the DVD itself, and then you've got to get it pressed, distributed into stores. Then you will need someone who has a relationship with the stores to pitch it into them. Then they take their commission, and then if it doesn't sell, then you've got the returns as well. There's all sorts of costs that involved in physical distribution. But certainly in America, where you've got places like Redbox, where you could sell 15, 20,000 units to Redbox, then that's amazing. And that's not a bad figure. But the revenue has dropped quite a lot. But that's one avenue for you. Then you've also got iTunes, Sky Store, which is really good. And then Virgin, also, I think Ubiquity is a company that owns that. So then you've got Virgin Store. And then obviously Amazon is a big one as well now. And a lot of revenue does come through Amazon, through Prime. And so that's on the standard route. Then you've got other rights, so you can try and sell to smaller TV broadcasters. And then you've got now AVOD, which is a new model, advertising video on demand. So that's where my platform comes in. And then there's other ways of going to Amazon Prime, but then you're only getting a small amount of money per every hour it's broadcast. Mm-hmm. But I think you just have to look at trying to hit as many different avenues, and the models change all the time. What might be current now could change. I heard IMDb are doing a TV. No, it's a non-subscription, so it's an AVOD. So there's going to be more and more different ways of generating revenue. And I believe, as a filmmaker, you've got to try and, if you're going down the self-distribution route, try and hit as many as you can, because you don't know which one's going to strike.
And so I think, you know, there are a ton of different options in here. And by the way, on in terms of DVDs, there is also an option on Amazon where you can actually sell DVDs where you don't have to buy them in bulk ahead of time, but it's just if someone buys your DVD, they'll make it. You get a lot of money out of that.
I suppose the problem with Amazon sometimes is keeping it stocked up, because you know you can, what you can do is a campaign and do loads of social media advertising, and then you see a spike, and if they've run out of stock, that's a real frustration. I have. But yeah, if there's a service where they produce them as and when someone buys one, brilliant. I think that's a really good service. And some people on the right films still really do well on DVD. You know, horror films, if you can put that in ASDA, that still does quite well. You know, there's still revenue to be had. So there's just certain genres work well on certain mediums, and that's why there's not one size that fits all.
Yeah. So let's maybe dive into, you know, you've got your online distribution. There's plenty of different platforms, you know, and we'll talk about Film Ahoy in a moment. But before we get there, what are, you know, you've put your film on Amazon, you know, if you manage to get your film on iTunes, quite selective, you know, you've got all these different platforms. What can you do then to actually drive the right traffic there and create that awareness? You know, part of it, you talked about, you know, creating those events and having a theatrical release beforehand. But what else can you do in terms of reviews, press, media, paid advertisements? What are the best options?
Well, getting visibility is so hard now, because obviously with the internet, I thought it would have been easier to find your audience, but then there's so much you have to cut through to get visibility. It depends on your budget, really. I mean, I always say if you can get a publicist, because that will help you get reviews. It also will help you get stories. If you've got some newsworthy cast members, then that obviously helps get some traction, and when you're trying to promote film. And if you can get your actors on a TV show talking about your film, that's a massive amount of eyes now, and people that would have heard about your film. So that's why I think PR is quite important. And if you work out all the PR coverage you get and what the actual value would be, that if you was advertising that, then you'd save a lot of money. So there's always a big impetus into PR. Then your physical marketing spend, it depends on how you want to strategize it. You know, you could do a London Underground campaign. Does that work for your film? Is people going to see that poster and say, right, I want to watch that now? I don't know. And that's why you have to be quite sure that your target audience is in that right place. So I think it's also understanding your audience and knowing who your audience might be. So if you feel your film's more male skewed, you might want to, or it's a lads type of movie, then you might want to do your promotions around football matches, for instance, where you've got a large footfall of people, and you can target your prime audience. And then it's also the type of TV shows you want to get onto. So when we did a film called City Rats, which was really successful and was #3 in the charts, sold 400,000 DVDs, it had Danny Dyer and Tamara Sam when they were at the peak of what they were doing. And, you know, we got onto Soccer AM. Soccer AM is great for that type of audience. And then we did loads of promotions outside football grounds at the same time, and just tried to create as much noise. On the Bromley Boys, we managed to get a great deal to have billboards, and now you got on roads a lot of these digital billboard spaces, so you could pick the right areas where you think you might get more traction by putting adverts up there. It depends on how much you want to spend on the outdoor, what you call it is outdoor campaign, so out in the street. But they say, I think it's about 5 or 6 times you have to see the same message before it registers. So it's not just outdoor. Then you obviously got to look at online and social media, and you can hire a social media agency, and that social media agency will create loads of assets. So also when you're making your film, you want to think about all the different assets you can create. Get a student or someone to keep running around and getting little crazy things that happen on set, which you can then put out on social media. Do loads of Facebook Live interviews with different casts and different things, just to try and build up that engagement and get more and more interest. If you can create funny clips and push it out there and hope that it goes viral, great. And then you've got obviously your paid social media, so paying for advertising on Facebook, Google AdWords, if that's what you want to do. There's so many different things you can pay for, and there's no guarantee that what you're going to do is going to turn into sales. That's the mystery which we always have, and if you can have the data. So if I spend, say, £1,000 on a Facebook campaign, I want to see what that translates into sales straight away. And if you're...
Is that something you've tried with online distribution with your own films, perhaps, to actually doing a Facebook campaign, for example, for it? And if yes, was that successful?
Sometimes it can be, yeah. If you get the right campaign that strikes the right chord, it's different things. Obviously there's Instagram. If you can get hold of an influencer that has 300,000 or 400,000 people and they put tweets out about your film. We've given loads of DVDs to radio presenters or people that have a good exposure. There's so many things you have to work out in your campaign. It's just working out a strategy. I mean, I've been on quite a few courses and still feel I only know a little fraction of what I should know about it, because the world's changing so quickly as well. So when you think you've mastered it, the next time you try that same strategy, it might not work for that particular film. It's really difficult to navigate your way around it, but you learn a lot from that experience. I learned a lot from doing the drive-in cinemas as well. That was great experience, and if I persevered with that, I think I could have grown that quite well, because it wasn't with the drive-in cinemas, we weren't just doing our own film, we were also distributing Grease and other films. So we had our own film playing, but then we played others around it. So it took the pressure off our own film and also generated revenue as well. Because they're quite expensive, when you're doing drive-in events, you're going into an empty field and you've got to build the whole infrastructure and sell tickets as well. But I don't know if I've covered everything that I can cover, because it is such a changing world. And, I learned a lot from working with distributors, and the more time you spend with them and talk to the marketing people, I think that the clever people are the PR and marketing people, because they know how to make their budget go as far as possible. And there is a real art to spending not a lot of money, but making it go as far as possible. And, the last film was a snooker film, so it's not a sport that's been told in film so much, but we got World Snooker on board, and by getting them on board, that gave us access into their fan base as well, and that elevated the film. Plus, then they introduced us into broadcasters, so we had loads of coverage on the BBC around the World Snooker finals, and that was a lot of value we got by going down that road. So it's just finding the right strategy, and also being prepared to work stupid hours and not really sleeping much, because you've got to put probably more energy into the release of your film than actually making it, which is that's a harsh thing, and it's not as fun. Being on set is obviously a lot more fun than working out whether people are going to buy your film or not.
Yeah. And let's maybe talk a little bit more about Film Ahoy now, because it's a new platform, it's a different platform, and we had some questions about it. So let's maybe start off with how is it different from from the other platforms that exist? How is it different from Amazon, for example, Amazon Prime?
Well, the first one to really say why it's different is because it's not subscription. So how many subscription services can you afford to pay for? And a lot of distributors now are just trying to do subscription services, because if they can get 100,000 people paying £5 a month, that's not bad revenue over a year. So I understand why that model works, but I decided to go down a non-subscription, non-committal version. So we basically work it in two ways. You can watch the films for free, but then there's commercial breaks every 20 minutes, same as what it would be with free TV. Those commercial breaks are limited to be around about 2 minutes. I didn't want to bore people that they start switching off because they've got to sit through 5 minutes of adverts. So we basically put commercial breaks every 20 minutes throughout the film, and then that drives the revenue in for the filmmakers and the platform. Then the alternative is if you don't want to watch it with a commercial, then you just pay a token fee of £1 to watch it commercial free. So it's a very low priced model. And then the idea is that we're going to try and obviously build up the traffic. So we're just at the moment on a campaign to raise about £1 million for the platform, and then that hopefully will give us more exposure to push it out. You know, some people have heard of it, but in terms of also the content of what we're trying to get on there, we're not being specific. We're not saying we are going to be masters in horror or anything like that. We're trying to be right across the board, but also try and support indie films. So for instance, if you submitted your film, how the deal would work is we would split the revenue 50-50. So if someone pays £1 to watch it commercial free, you get 50p, we get 50p. And then the same with the advertising revenue. But we also will encourage the filmmakers to do promotion on there as well, and get the word out that their films are on those platforms. And the sort of channels we've got, there's one coming online called the Best of British. So we're trying to encourage British filmmakers to submit their work, and then we'll be promoting that part. We're also going to do a short film channel as well, where we're going to be grouping and programming short films, because a lot of people obviously make short films and don't have anywhere for their distribution. So that's something that we're going to definitely do. And again, encourage people to promote the films on there. And then what else we will do in some cases, we'll do a theatrical release. So it gives more exposure for that film. And in some cases, we will have it exclusively. See, ours is non-exclusive as well, so you can still go on all the other platforms, but there will be a couple of titles we want to go exclusive that we can go theatrically and then build up loads of hype about them, and then they're only available on Film Ahoy, so that drives more traffic to it. But the other thing with Film Ahoy is there's no commitment. So if you see a film that you really enjoy and have that great experience, you're not tied into coming back tomorrow or feel obliged that you have to come back because you're paying a subscription fee. So you can see something you like online, watch it, and then not come back for 6 months. So it's just a casual platform as an alternative to what's already out there. And the type of programming we're trying to get is still stuff of quality, because obviously I'm a filmmaker, so I want to make sure that there's good production values in what people see, but also a good hook, a good story that drives you as an audience, and also to give other people opportunities. You know, I feel as a filmmaker, I want to make sure I give people opportunities that I didn't always have.
Yeah, definitely. And interesting. So you mentioned, you know, it's quite obvious if you purchase a film for £1 to watch without, you know, the ad breaks, you know, it's a 50-50 split. Do you have rough amounts, for example, how much a filmmaker could make if someone views a film, you know, without just with the adverts, you know, and doesn't buy it? Yeah. On Amazon, it tends to be, you know, a cent per hour or something like that. That you know.
More than that. It works out about 10 pence a viewing of the film. Okay. So it is a better percentage. You know, what we're trying to get per 1,000 views is roughly about £10. But it varies depending on the demand at that time for advertising space. But if we can try and at least give 10 pence every time the film is viewed, then I think that's what we're aiming for at the moment, which is better than Amazon. I know this new IMDb TV is coming out, but I think they're mainly picking out titles from the distributors and taking out the cream titles of each distributor. So I wonder how much opportunities will be for filmmakers in that. But yeah, at least that gives you an idea on what you could receive, and it's just an alternative platform. Where, obviously I've created it, and I can tell you it's going to be the best thing in the world. But it's just another alternative to what's out there. I still love Netflix. So I'm not going to stand here and say I've set up another platform and I hate Netflix and they're evil and you should go nowhere near them, because they create good content. But then, it's really hard to sell to Netflix as a producer. So if you don't get on Netflix and you don't get the Sky deal, when you don't get the Amazon deal, or the Amazon deal is not generating enough revenue, you need to go to as many different platforms as possible. So we're just another one, an alternative to what's out there. And, on certain films, we will try and do some of your job for you in terms of, putting it out theatrically. So it's an opportunity for filmmakers to get more exposure.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I've done a lot of interviews with people who had online tried to do their online self-distribution in the last year, and things have massively changed. Even at the beginning of 2020, you could put up your film just on Amazon, and sometimes you would literally get thousands of pounds every single month from doing absolutely nothing, because it would hit the right algorithm. You were getting paid, closer to 15 cents an hour, and if it did right, it was great. Now they're kind of slashed their rates so far down that filmmakers are making very little, for example, through Amazon and other platforms. It's so incredibly hard to get into iTunes. It's insanely hard to get into Netflix. So all these other platforms, and everyone that I've spoke to said that, yeah, we just try to release it on all the different platforms, because that's really the only way that we can.
You don't know which one's right. Tubi is, I suppose, our rival, which is still owned by a massive company, but they haven't launched in the UK yet, and it might not work for your particular film. Each platform also builds up a certain audience, and it depends on your visibility. If you go on the homepage, for instance, and you're one of the first films people see, you're going to get a higher hit rate. If you don't have that relationship with the platform and you end up on page 60, your numbers are going to be a lot less. So sometimes it's down to how well your relationship is with those platforms as well.
Yeah. Definitely. And yeah, for everyone watching who's interested in Film Ahoy, there is a link just above this video in the description of this post. So there's one link which is just going straight to the website, and then there is another link with a little video for filmmakers and how they can get their film up there, and a little bit more information about that for anyone that's that's interested in that.
Brilliant. Is there any questions or anything, or are we out of time?
I think we covered most of the questions, so I think we're all good here. So yeah, I want to thank you.
The thing is, I hate the sound of my own voice, and apologies if I have gone on too much about certain things, but I can only tell you from what I've experienced as a filmmaker so far, and it is a changing world, like you say.
Yep. No, and you've given us so much useful information, and I absolutely love these kinds of talks where I can ask one question and you will answer it fully within 15 minutes, and I don't need to ask all the follow-up questions. So that was great. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure everyone else also got a lot of useful information out of it. So yeah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for watching.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Good luck with your films.
Indeed. So thank you all, and have a good evening or good morning, depending on where you are right now. And yeah, we'll try to do as many of these free events on this Facebook group as we can to give you guys useful information about filmmaking. So thank you, and yeah, take care.